Three, two, one, zero.
Uno, dos, tres, cuatro.
What is up, Big 12? It's Tuesday night. That can only mean one thing. It's time for another installment of your favorite Big 12 internet show, The Biggest 12. I'm your host, of course, Clint Foster. Thank you so much for being with me here on Texas Tech Night, as you can see by the t-shirt that I have so cleverly hung on my blinds here behind the couch. Definitely healthy for the blinds. And, of course, got the cowboy hat on for them Red Raiders out in West Texas. But tonight it's all West Texas, right? I'm willing to tell you, tonight on this Tuesday night, it is truly all West Texas, coming to you here from where the West begins, Fort Worth, Texas. Please, if you haven't already, like and subscribe to the show. What's wrong with you, man? There's so many good things happening here on Big 12 Voice of College Football. Not just my show, the Big 12 fan show, all sorts of stuff. You don't want to miss any of it. Like, subscribe. You know what to do. This isn't your first time on YouTube. Figure it out, man. So, without further ado, follow me on my stuff. Follow the channel at Clint Foster Comedy. I'm hoping to have a new video out here for y'all very soon. I'd planned to do it this past weekend, but my dog got a UTI, and that basically blew up all of my plans. But I'm sitting on a couple scripts right now, hoping to get some film for you soon. And follow me on Twitter at Clint_Foster55. So, let's get this Texas Tech show going. I got a real exciting couple of guests for y'all here today to talk all things Red Raiders. It's none other than Kyle and Rob themselves, the Gambling Gauchos. Gentlemen, thank you so much for being here on the show tonight.
Happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, big weekend for Texas Tech between Pat Mahomes getting another Super Bowl, the Red Raiders getting a big win over Kansas in basketball. I mean, are y'all tired of the winning yet?
I mean, yeah, it's not our first time beating Kansas by 29. Been there, done that. Patty Mahomes on Super Bowl MVP number 3. So, we need something new to kind of spice things up. We're tired of all this winning for sure.
Where do y'all land? Where do y'all land on the whole Taylor Swift faux controversy? Do y'all have any strong takes regarding that, since y'all were clearly rooting for the Chiefs on Sunday?
No, I think it's right to call it a faux controversy. I don't really think it's much of a deal. I know that Kyle had a change of heart around the playoff time, that he came around to enjoy the Taylor Swift shots in the crowd and learned to love it. But, as long as they got the dub, I can deal with 57 seconds of Taylor Swift over a 4.5-hour game.
Yeah, 57 seconds. All the hand-wringing has been so overwrought. Taylor Swift is enjoying a football game. How could she? Whatever. But, all right, so let's talk some Red Raiders. I'm going to start this the same way I've started all of these post-mortem shows. Gentlemen, if you had to give a letter grade to Texas Tech's 2023 season, what would you give the Raiders?
That's tough. B-.
Okay. Justify your answer, Cal.
Well, so I would say it didn't live up to the preseason hype, which probably going into the season, some would have told you, like, this is a little bit extreme, but certainly partway through the season and after the season, like, with the benefit of hindsight, a lot of fans are like, there's no way that – it's one thing for the media to kind of come up with their own thoughts and opinions, and, like, every year the media pegs the favorite, the dark horse, all that. But, like, for our own head coach to be out there so explicitly, not just the typical, like, I believe in my guys, we had a good camp, we're confident we can play with anybody, kind of like very explicitly, we're going to beat Texas, we're going to win the Big 12. And, like, to be fair to Joey, he did that year one. He was like, we're going to beat OU, and then we're going to knock down the south end zone and start construction on it, and, like, check. And so it's good that he's confident. Like, I'd much rather that than, like, oh no, we're scared to play TCU or Oklahoma or whatever. So it was tremendously disappointing from that standpoint. I don't think you'll find a single Texas Tech fan that's like, you know what, we exceeded expectations this year, because everybody feels underwhelming in that respect. But zooming out, the 10 years before Joey McGuire was hired, I could make a pretty solid case was our worst decade in program history from a conference win percentage standpoint, bowl wins standpoint. And he's hired in the fall of 2021. Sonny Cumbie finishes out the year as the interim, but we beat Iowa State for the first time in a while when they had a pretty good team, win the bowl game. That at the time was our first bowl win since 2013, at least until LSU had their 2015 Texas Bowl win vacated, which maybe we can get into that later. Then Joey has our first winning season in Big 12 play since 2009 in his first year as head coach, and he did it again last year. And so I look at it from that standpoint. I go, well, winning conference record for only the second time since 2009, and Joey did it both times. Bowl win for what was the second and third time since 2013. And so, like, zooming out, I go, well, we're still on an upward trajectory, and the hire of Joey McGuire still put us well above where we were the decade before he got here. So I think that he deserves some credit. I think he partially his own fault, kind of fell victim to expectations. But, like, had there not been so much hype around Texas Tech, I think it would have been objectively viewed as another step in the right direction.
Yeah, I mean, hype definitely plays a role in all of this, and the hype train has been out of control. But Rob, what's your take? What letter grade would you give to the Raiders in 2023?
Yeah, I think context is key. I think if you look at the non-conference and the final game of the season, not including the bowl game, if you look at that Texas game in the non-conference, I see an F in the chat here. I don't know if that's we're throwing Fs in the chat for something. Maybe the game of the Gauchos. I think he just threw an F in the chat for F grade. You might give an F for the first 3 games and the final game of the regular season. But otherwise, I think you're really competitive in the Big 12, which is what you want to be. C+, B-. I think you're right there. I think you do have those expectations, and I think you can live up to those expectations in the Joey McGuire era. You just did not this year. But again, winning record in Big 12 play, you echo a lot of what Kyle just said. There were some positives. You're a possession away from beating West Virginia in your first Big 12 game, and I think you started slow and had 2 quarterback injuries in that one game. And you didn't have a healthy quarterback again until I don't know if you did. Maybe the Cal game because you had an AC sprain with Baron Morton after the Tyler Shuck leg injury. So quarterback injuries, defensive injuries, you kind of lived up to Big 12 conference play, and you were competitive. And, yeah, I think that's as much as you can ask for. You went to another bowl game.
Yeah, went to a bowl game, won the bowl game. You got the saddle back. I mean, that's huge, no matter how disappointing TCU season was. But yeah, I think it's hard not to focus on the lows, right? Because that Oregon game was capital B brutal. I mean, I just hated that for you all the way that game went. And you know, both TCU and Tech losing to Texas that last game is just such a kick in the nuts. Was there? I mean, I don't want to dwell on too many negatives, but was there a particular low point that stood out to you in the season?
Man,
probably.
We went to Wyoming, so
yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say probably sitting in the bleachers in Laramie. It was a great experience. Otherwise, it's a great college town, very scenic venue. They gave us a tour of the facilities. We go up in that game 17-0, and we're just like, oh heck yeah! Like this is what we came for. The hype is warranted. You know, Oregon is on upset alert next week. All that, and then fast forward about 2.5 hours. I'm watching somebody storm the field after beating Tech for the first time in my life as a Tech fan, and I go, man, this walk back to the parking lot is gonna suck, and it did. You know, in some ways, I wish, you know, if we're looking at like kind of most disappointing game, I wish one of the Big 12 games would have gone the other way. Like Rob said, kind of battling some quarterback injuries. I don't think that we lose to BYU with a healthy quarterback. I don't think we lose to West Virginia with a healthy quarterback. Oregon was your best shot to beat kind of like a top tier team this season. So I don't know. I think you could take your pick. It's hard for me to sort of rank them. But yeah, you know, I'm not greedy as a fan. You just change like 1 or 2 of those 4 or 5 results, and I'm like, oh yeah, you know, solid season. I don't need them all back. But yeah, you kind of certainly had a variety to choose from, unfortunately.
Yeah, Wyoming is a beautiful location. I got to go up there back in the Mountain West days, when I was still in college and working for the team. So yeah, it's a very cool place to go. What about high points though? What was the high point to y'all of the season?
Yeah, the Rally Fox making an appearance against TCU.
Freaking possum, man! If it's not a fox, it's a possum. I mean, we can't catch a break.
That's what is that? Our first Super Bowl of the season, followed by Patrick Mahomes. So
Tired of being Texas Tech Super Bowl.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there were. I mean, is it bad to say the recruiting class, Micah Hudson, was a high point of the season?
Hey, honestly.
Didn't we beat a ranked team on the road for the first time since like 2018?
Oh,
People just forget that we beat Kansas.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
I mean, it feels weird to be like, hey, beating Kansas in football was a high point, but like Kansas is good now. They really are. And that's not a gimme win anymore. And that was, gutted that one out for sure.
Yeah, and you alluded to it. Beating TCU, McGuire only had that one shot at them previously, but before that, Wells lost 3 in a row. I think Cliff won the last one when he was here. So, but we were, I guess, on a 4-game lose streak. So that was good to get back in the win column in that one. And then a loss that really stung last year was Baylor. You're favored by 2 or 3 points in that game. So no give me, but felt like it was a team you could beat if you played well. And that was the only game that we weren't really competitive in 22. And of course, there's the underlying context there. If that's Joey's former employer, you're trying to prove to them that, they should have hired him instead of Aranda back in the day. And so that one was very cathartic, especially in Waco. Was there with a few friends, and to just beat the brakes off of them was a lot of fun. So to get those 2 in-state rivalries back in the win column was also pretty cool. So yeah, just a very mixed bag this season. Like, the recruiting is off the charts. You win a couple pretty big rivalry games. You beat a ranked team on the road for the first time in a while, but also we just ran through like a handful of low points. So it was a bit of a roller coaster for sure.
Yeah. At least you made a bowl game. Could be worse. And you beating Baylor, always chef's kiss. It's never a bad day when you beat Baylor. I was going to ask y'all a question about Joey McGuire hype, but Joey Foster in the chat is actually kind of beating me to it. So, question for the panel. Joey is doing an amazing job recruiting, like you said, Micah Hudson, but did that lead to disappointment last year when I had you guys playing for a Big 12 title? Is Joey on the hot seat after that? I guess what does it take to put Joey McGuire on the hot seat for y'all?
Yeah, short answer is no. I think we're a long ways away from Joey being on the hot seat. If he goes 6-6 again, or 6-6, 7-5, like 5 years in a row, I think you're like, okay, well, he's not translating this recruiting into anything big, but what does it take to put Joey on the hot seat? I think it would take quite a bit. I think the recruiting would have to fall off. I think you'd have to take a major step backwards. Like, is Sonny Dykes on the hot seat after missing a bowl game? I mean, he just went to a national championship, so I don't think so. Kyle, what do you think? What would it take to? Because you kind of gave a smirk there. What would it take for Joey McGuire to be on the hot seat?
Well, I was just thinking back to our 2 previous coaches before him, Cliff Kingsbury and Matt Wells. And with Cliff Kingsbury, the overall record at the end of each season was not terribly remarkable. It was usually like one decent year, 6-7 wins, then you fall off and you get back to 6 or 7 wins. And after 6 years of kind of hovering right around there, people decided it's not enough. But he at least had some redeeming qualities as a head coach. Our offense was always elite. Like, a down year with him was still a top 25 offense. A good year was a top 10 offense. Now, the defense was terrible. The recruiting was terrible. But if you wanted to give him the benefit of the doubt, you could point to 1 or 2 things and say he still has some redeeming qualities. Matt Wells, not trying to be overly hard on the guy, there were no redeeming qualities. Like, we're not making bowl games. We're not beating rivals. We're recruiting at the bottom of the Big 12. There's no hope or momentum. Sorry if you can hear my toddler in the background. She's a huge fan of your podcast, Clint. And so it was like, we got to get out of here. Like, there is 0 things positive going for Texas Tech football right now. With Joey, I could say the opposite is true. Like, the fact that in year 2 we're disappointed we didn't make a Big 12 championship game based on where we were as a program when he inherited it is kind of wild. Like, that shows, in my opinion, how good of a job he's doing, that was even entertained as a possibility. So I would say, I mean, you'd have to kind of remove a lot of these, like the recruiting would have to fall off. You'd have to quit punching up and beating some of your rivals. You'd have to quit winning some ranked games. He's done that every season. You'd have to start getting a losing record in Big 12 play, kind of like all at the same time. Because I think in the past, Texas Tech has been more or less okay with, if you're doing a couple of those, your job is pretty safe. So I think he's a long ways from the hot seat, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, I think if I'm looking at it from a Texas Tech perspective, it has been such a frustrating journey ever since Mike Leach's, ever since Craig James ruined his tenure at Texas Tech, that there's so much excitement around Joey McGuire right now. There's so much positivity. I think it would take several seasons not performing up to expectations to really even consider it. TCU's in an interesting situation. I mean, yes, Sonny Dykes is absolutely not on the hot seat right now, but I think that if we missed a bowl game again next year, you'd have a lot of people like really starting to get frustrated and calling for Sonny's head, saying like, well, wait a minute, you won with Gary's guys. Was that a fluke? And, is the culture for real and all of that stuff? I don't see that happening. I see TCU as having a decent, like 7-8 win season next year. Hopefully that happens. But yeah, we'll see what happens in both regards. So let's look ahead a little bit to 2024. I mean, you got Baron Morton coming back. Well, let's just zero in on him first, as I like Baron Morton a lot. He impressed me in the games that I watched. This is actually the first time hearing that he wasn't completely healthy throughout last season. What are y'all's thoughts on Baron Morton, quarterback of the future? You like him?
Yeah, we're big Baron Morton fans. Have been since his first start against Oklahoma State. Going back even further, wanted him to start much earlier in his career. It was a mixed bag this year, though. Pretty poor at times. Pretty elite at times. I thought he had a really good game against TCU. I thought he had a really good game against Houston. So you kind of say, well, if you take all the negatives and say that was injuries and that was the shoulder and he couldn't make those deep throws or have that elite arm talent that the quarterback's coach said was reminiscent of one Patrick Mahomes in a hype video before last season. I'm really high on Baron Morton. I think he is a gamer. I think he has the ability to make all the throws. But you're also in back-to-back seasons where he has dealt with an injury. So you just want to say, can he do it longevity-wise? Can he start 12 games? Can he start 13 games? And that's the question here. So very high on Baron Morton. But it's been since 2016 that a starter has started every single game for Texas Tech at quarterback, and that was Patrick Mahomes. Mm-hmm. And he had a bum shoulder and a torn MCL and a broken wrist and still started every game. So we'll see what happens. It's been a long time since we've had a guy start every game, and I hope it's Baron Morton this season.
Well, yeah, and as a rising junior too, you'd expect him to have a great year. At least I would. And especially with Taj Brooks back, Micah Hudson. I mean, I feel like you got to be feeling good about this offense. I don't know what y'all's offensive line situation is going into 2024. The transfer portal is so hard to keep track of. But give us, what are y'all's thoughts on the offense for those of us who are uninitiated?
Yeah, I would say your biggest problem last year, besides just the lack of quarterback health, was you had no juice on the offense. There was not a single guy that you thought, man, if he's got the ball in his hand, something special could happen here. I forget the exact data points I could put them, but you were like worse in the Big 12 in yards after catch, worse in explosive plays. Like you just had nothing there. The semi-exception to that was Taj Brooks, who was incredibly productive, most broken tackles I think in the country, at least the Power 5. But he's not an explosive player. I would need to double check this. I think his longest run last year was 24 yards, which is a great run. But when you're talking about a guy who ran for 1,300 yards and was all Big 12 and everything, you would expect that like he would have broken one for at least much longer than that. He's just like a get 5 to 8 every single time you give him the ball, which is incredibly advantageous, but it's not explosive. And so we churned a lot of the receivers. You mentioned Micah Hudson. Kind of difficult to gauge expectations. On one hand, he's a true freshman, and there's an adjustment from the high school game. On the other hand, he's the most talented true freshman you've ever brought into this program, and you do see prospects of his caliber coming and making an immediate impact sometimes. Out of the transfer portal at the wide receiver spot, we also got Josh Kelly out of Washington State. I think Fresno State before that. Incredibly productive player in the Pac-12 the last couple years. A guy who hasn't been as productive but was also pretty highly touted was blanking on his name out of Florida. I think last name is Douglas. Rob, do you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah. Caleb Douglas?
That's what I think. Yeah, I was going to call him Gabe Douglas. I knew that wasn't right. I was like, he's on the Bills. But anyway, a guy that, again, kind of unsure how to gauge the expectations, if they're expecting him to come in and start or if he's sort of kind of still a raw talent who needs to come into his own a little bit. But I would be very surprised if you didn't take a pretty good leap forward in that department in terms of explosive plays on the offensive side of the ball. You are replacing a lot on the offensive line. I think you're only returning. He played right tackle last year. I think they're going to move him inside. And they brought in 2 really highly touted guards out of the portal from Toledo and Memphis. So they're making the jump from the group of 5. But if you look at PFF, all conference honors, they're checking those boxes at the group of 5 level. So hopefully that translates.
Those are usually the gems, I feel like. The guys who are moving up rather than the guys who burnt out in the SEC or wherever.
Yeah. So I think the overall takeaway is cautiously optimistic. I think hopefully the offensive line unit is at least as good as it was last year, which was good enough to run the ball pretty well. I think there was something to be desired in terms of pass pro. Maybe you upgraded at the offensive line, but I think you certainly upgraded overall at the skill positions with your quarterback returning another year older, Tosh Brooks coming back, and I think some of the additions at wide receiver are gonna really pay off.
Well, let's take a look at the schedule. We got the official schedule now. And what were y'all's immediate takeaways whenever you saw the order of games, the homes and aways? I mean, what are y'all feeling about this?
I like the schedule. I really do. I don't always love the non-conferences that are put out. I think North Texas and Abilene Christian are fun games because they feature former coaches here at Texas Tech, Keith Patterson and Eric Morris. We got non-conference wise, the Washington State game I also hate. It should be a Eugene game against Oregon. That's besides the point as well. As far as conference goes, love playing the Arizona schools. I love that they're spaced out home and away. Haven't got Cincinnati yet. I love that one as well. And you get that one in Lubbock. You get to play Baylor and
Tommy Tuberville Bowl, right?
Absolutely. You don't get to have Baylor and TCU every year, which is also a shame, an absolute shame.
Yes.
That's not an automatic game.
Yeah.
Ames in November is a little bit worrisome to me. You get the prime effect in Lubbock. I love that. You get to play in Stillwater against Alan Bowman for his final game against Texas Tech ever, unless he gets a 19th year next year. A little weird to finish against West Virginia, but again, I like finishing in Lubbock as much as I love playing, in Austin or wherever else at Thanksgiving every year. I like the schedule. I think it's amenable to a winning record.
Clint, a lot of Texas Tech fans after the offseason hype last year, I think, learned their lesson in terms of managing expectations, not drinking the Kool-Aid, not buying into the hype. I am not one of those Texas Tech fans. So I look at this.
Kyle. I'd love to hear it.
I look at this schedule and I think a couple things. I think, one, our overall roster talent is completely underrated conference-wide. I think a lot of people have us pegged as a bottom half of the conference team. Would need to crunch the exact numbers. I think we're a top 3 roster talent. We might be number 1. Looking at kind of like depending how you slice it up.
First time hearing of this.
Yeah. And then I look at it this way. There's 16 teams in the Big 12. We're one of them. And so there's 15 teams that we could have played. FanDuel released their win totals for each Big 12 team next year, which schedule plays into that. But if we use that as a pretty good proxy for how good a team is going into the season, Texas Tech plays, I think, 8 of the 9 lowest teams on that 16-team pecking order. Of the top 5 teams in FanDuel win totals, we're one of them. We don't play 3 of them. And then the other one is Arizona, who has a brand new head coach that I'm very skeptical about. So I take all that together and go, okay, we might line up with better players than every single team we play next year. The one team that is kind of in our same tier or echelon in terms of win totals next year, I'm very skeptical about. And then the rest of the schedule per Vegas win totals is pretty manageable. Now, of course, some teams win 4 more games than they were pegged before the season. Some teams lose 4 more games than they were pegged before the season. So we'll see. But it's February, so that's all we have to go off of right now. And I look at that and go, yeah, this is a really, really favorable schedule for Texas Tech, in my opinion.
Well, I'm glad y'all are happy with it. I mean, I feel like if I was in y'all's shoes It's kind of a tough October, November, just from me looking at it. I mean, Arizona, like you said, is a total enigma. We know they're going to have talent, but who knows how the new coach is going to look, how he's going to jive with the players. You've got back-to-back rivalry games there to finish out October. So Baylor and TCU are both going to give you their best shot, especially with I'm not sure about Baylor, but I know TCU is not on the schedule in 25. And then, like you mentioned, Iowa State in November. We're also playing Iowa State. I think. No, we're playing Cincinnati. Sorry, Iowa State in November. Colorado, I wouldn't be worried about, but then Oklahoma State and West Virginia back to back. Those are two tough games. Obviously, Oklahoma State is a totally different team away from home than they are in Stillwater. But still, I mean, that's you're going to have to be playing your best ball there at the end of the year to get those wins where you can get them. But this actually does bring up a question that we had gotten in the chat, another one from Joey, actually. Who does your panel think are the top 5 teams this coming year in the Big 12? Who do you see as the teams to beat?
You're missing a couple of them on the schedule, which is good. Kansas State and Utah.
Mm-hmm. And Kansas.
I'm not as high on Kansas as some. I think I certainly think they're good. Is Jalen Daniels ever going to play again? Does he have back spasms the rest of his life? I don't know. Let's see.
Kansas State and Utah. That's 2.
Kansas State, Utah. On the schedule, I think Arizona still is going to be competitive at the top of the league. And if you look at Vegas, Texas Tech, and UCF are the next ones, right?
Okay.
As far as win totals go.
Yeah. You agree, Kyle?
I think Kansas State, and Utah definitely should be in any kind of top 5 conversation. Where people don't probably agree with me, I would put Texas Tech in there as well pretty confidently, and happy to share the reasoning and data behind that with anybody who would like to hear it. The 5th spot, I don't know. I could see like Colorado, I think talented roster. Not sure about like the depth and the coaching there. I wanted that Colorado game as late in the season as possible. So 3rd to last game is not too bad. I just think by then that's when some of those cracks start to show. Like TCU, in my opinion, very unfortunate having to play them right out of the gates this year.
With 0 film.
Yeah. And like Colorado offense was really good when everybody was healthy, and then kind of fell off a bit, and people learned how they played, and the depth starts to show, and they did really well in the portal. So I don't know if it's Colorado. Iowa State, I think, returns a good deal. They lose TJ Tampa, but they certainly punched above their weight last year. West Virginia, they returned their quarterback. They returned some playmakers, but they lose a few guys off of a really, really experienced and good offensive line. So I don't know. I think the top 3 are pretty well solidified. I'm pretty confident in Tech as number 4, and then I think like 5 on down, you could start to make some pretty serious arguments one way or another.
Not buying the Oklahoma State hype?
No, I actually think that they were not as good as they showed this year, and I don't know. I don't buy it. I know Gundy is kind of inevitable, and he sort of proved me wrong this past year by winning 9 or 10 games, whatever they finished with. But I don't know. Like you saw that game in Orlando, and I don't know. Like they lost to a really good Texas team. Almost everybody did. Really, no shame in that. But like other than getting up for a big rivalry game at home, like I don't know. You start to peel a couple layers off the onion. They got housed by UCF. Got housed by South Alabama at home.
Dang near lost to BYU.
Yeah, like they won a good Friday night game against Kansas State in what was easily, I don't know if I want to say easily, but probably Kansas State's worst game of the season. I don't know if their fans would agree with that or not.
Well, Texas is up there for sure.
Yeah, but they had their chances. Kind of blew that one. But yeah, no, I'm not sold on Oklahoma State. Maybe Alan Bowman will make me pay for saying that. But I'm not really a believer in him as a quarterback. Not sure I'm a believer in that roster. The win total 7.5, which I think it was this past year, and then they won 10 games. Maybe the odds makers just aren't learning their lesson. Maybe I'm not learning my lesson about Gundy. But yeah, like if I'm being totally honest, I'm not sold on it.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be an incredibly competitive conference this next year and every year for as long as they let us keep playing football in it. I'm so dang excited. It's going to be so much fun. I think, I mean, you mentioned the top 5 and really not a lot of distance separating them from a lot of folks. I think there's a lot of teams that could be dark horses this year and could really inject themselves into the conference championship conversation. I really hope it's not Utah. I feel like, like everybody, like it will probably be Utah in the Big 12 championship, but that's just really gross and lame. And like their Twitter fans are awful. Like,
yeah,
it's really been a reminder of like, oh yeah, this is why I hated these guys in the 2000s. Like,
yeah. If I can speak to Joey in the comments a little bit, I think he's painting us as these like huge West Virginia doubters. And I would like to pat ourselves on the back a little bit. When Rob and I submitted our preseason Big 12 ballot before 2023, we were like one of, 5 or 10% of ballots that did not have West Virginia in last place. Was pretty high on Garrett Green going into the season, was high on that offensive line. So I'm not like doubting West Virginia at all. I think looking objectively at it, though, Neil Brown has had one good season, and if Joey will recall, pretty much their entire fan base wanted him gone
before this year.
Yeah, and they like couldn't afford it. / had a new athletic director, and then he kind of was a Hail Mary away from 10 wins. If they can defend a Hail Mary in Houston, they win 10 games last year. So I'm not doubting them. I'm just not sold on them either. I think it could be 6 wins with Neil Brown. It could be another 9-win season. And a lot of teams are that way. Like you said, there's going to be a lot of parity. There's going to be a lot of teams that I think when the dust settles, look back and go, man, 3 or 4 games were like a play or a drive away from completely flipping.
I'm doubting Neil Brown, just to clarify.
Not a climb truster, huh? Man, that's going to set the world on fire. All right, so we mentioned briefly the fox and the possum. TCU in particular has had very bad luck with rally critters and Lubbock. I am wondering, I'm interested to know from y'all. We're going to play a little game here, which I have dubbed Rally Critter or Big Game Quitter. All right, where we're going to look at native fauna of West Texas. And you are going to tell me whether or not you feel that if this critter was to get loose in AT&T Jones Stadium, would they will the Raiders to a victory or would they work against them? Do you understand the
Gotcha.
game? Okay. All right. So we're gonna see how this goes. I have the official TWP wildlife identification guide right here pulled up, ready to go. Okay. We're gonna look at some West Texas fauna, and we're gonna make some judgment calls here. Let's start with a javelina, okay, or collared peccary. If a javelina gets loose on the turf at AT&T Jones Stadium, it's like a little pig, right? Like a little wild pig.
Oh yeah.
Is Texas Tech winning that game, or is Texas Tech losing that game?
Yeah, I would go with winning the game with a javelina. I think you're really having to pull some pretty big animal control people out there to get the javelina off the field. And
those things move.
I think a delay might work in your favor.
Yeah, I feel good about seeing a javelina under a full moon on a Thursday night against TCU in Lubbock. Feel really good about that. So, yeah, I'll go big game critter.
Okay. Next, a badger. Okay. I didn't even actually realize that we had badgers in Texas. But a badger gets loose. I feel like which way you're all going to go on this. This is very similar to the possum fox vibe. Is a badger catapulting the Raiders to victory?
Badger, I think, very underrated in the pantheon of tough animals. Mm-hmm. I know some ranchers in West Texas that came upon just absolutely horrific scenes of cattle that had been demolished by what they suspect was a badger, and like,
oh god,
kind of spooky. Like, okay, I'm going to back away and leave this area in case the badger's still around. Badger's tough. God bless any stadium security staff that have to go wrangle that thing up. But yeah, I think the badger is inspiring the Red Raiders to another victory. So I'll say big game critter.
Agreed.
Okay. All right. Very nice. So we've got a muskrat here, but I'm gonna make a slight adjustment. Y'all are familiar with nutrias, right? The river rats.
Uh-huh.
I don't know if that's the same as a muskrat, but let's say that a nutria, it's like a beaver with a rat tail, gets loose in AT&T Jones. Is a nutria, are the Raiders winning or are the Raiders losing? Is that bad luck?
What water is this coming from? I don't, is this from Lake Allen Henry or?
Yeah, I don't know. So, okay. I'm assuming that Lubbock has a reservoir somewhere or like a creek or something.
Right. Sure. I think this is bad news if a water animal gets anywhere close to the Jones. I would say this would be a negative.
It's a bad omen.
There was a Texas Tech professor maybe 2 or 3 years ago that actually found a beaver at McKenzie Park, Rob, in like the Canyon Lakes.
Right. Oh, I do remember that.
But I agree, especially when we play TCU, we're leaning into the desert ethos, and so I think a water animal is probably not a good omen. I'll say big game quitter.
Okay, all right, very nice. A skunk, classic striped skunk, loose on the field. Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing?
I think given Jamie Dixon's current hairstyle, this would be a good omen for TCU. So I'll say big game quitter.
I agree. I also think this would be a negative, especially on the football field. You don't want to feel like you're backed into a corner, and you don't want to be spraying people. So I would say a big game quitter as well.
Okay, yeah, and I appreciate the Jamie Dixon reference as well. Very nice. Okay, I'm shocked that this has never happened. A raccoon is loose in the Jones. All right, what's happening?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean the raccoon is wearing the same kind of eyewear as the masked rider. That might be the best omen possible for the Red Raiders. So I'll say big game critter.
Yeah, you're about to go on 30 unanswered here if the raccoon gets loose.
Yeah, that feels like a gimme for sure. Okay, now we're getting into some larger animals. A coyote. So this has got to be some kind of mangy coyote. Something's wrong with this coyote. How did it get into the stadium? But are the Raiders winning if there's a coyote in AT&T Jones that has to stop play?
Yeah, and why is it alone? Where's the pack?
Yeah. So a whole herd of coyotes come in, they descend upon the Jones. No. What do you think?
I think we're back on a good omen here. I think they feed on. I'm trying to read. They feed on rabbits and small mammals.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure they've eaten a lizard before, so I'm in with the coyote.
Yeah, the coyote feels like a larger version of the fox, kind of like Fox 2.0. So I would welcome this as a good omen.
What about a bobcat? A wildcat gets loose on the field. And let's assume that you're playing Kansas State, okay? So it's not TCU for this scenario. You're playing Kansas State and a bobcat gets on the field. Maybe some mixed messaging here.
Well, Kansas State, Houston, BYU. I mean, I think there's way too many Cougars here to see that as a good thing for Texas Tech.
You've got Cincinnati Bearcats, Arizona Wildcats.
No, there's too many.
I think any kind of cat is maybe not something we want to see at the Jones.
What if it's a house cat, though? What if it's like that Giants-Cowboys game a while back? There's a black cat loose on the field.
There are definitely cats that live on or near campus. And like the fox, by the way, like definitely lives under the stadium for the most part. So I would view that as kind of like a native resident. So I think a house cat would be a good sign.
Okay. Let's say an armadillo waddles across the field very slowly. Actually, I think they can move kind of fast if they're behooved to do so. I mean, this feels like a gimme as well. Armadillo on the Jones.
All in on the armadillo.
Yeah, it's just an armored possum if you look at the tail and the shell there. So I love that.
Tactical possum, right? What did Joey say about the coyote? Says, bring that coyote on. We have a real musket with our mascot.
Yeah, that's what I was worried about with the javelina, that somebody would try to get one right behind the ear and cook up some pork barbecue that weekend.
Can you imagine the carnage? Oh, my God. I'm going to skip over the little bunny here and move right on to like a West Texas jackrabbit. These things are kind of freaky looking. I don't know if y'all have actually seen like a full-on jackrabbit. Let's say a jackrabbit with the big long ears. It's loose on the field. Big game critter.
I'm mixed here. What do you think, Kyle?
Yeah, I don't know. So we had I think maybe our best defensive player last year, Dadrian Taylor Demerson. His nickname was Rabbit, but he's no longer here. So especially if we were looking for a defensive stop and Rabbit was still on the team, I might take this as a better sign. But full transparency, this guy doesn't look that tough. He looks really good posing by the cactus there, but I don't know if that's as good of an omen as some of the other ones we've seen.
What if it's a jackalope, though? What if you got an actual rabbit with antlers, proving the existence of jackalopes?
Yeah, I think that'd be a little more on our side. Yeah, I think just in the power rankings of what we've done so far, I would say the jackalope whatever is not high on the list, but is on the list. How about that?
West Virginia fans are just fully in the chat about eating critters right now.
Love them so much. Ask them about squirrel gravy if you don't know about squirrel gravy.
Oh, I'm sure that is a West Virginia absolute delicacy. I mean, I hope that when I had Tudor's biscuits in Morgantown, I hope it was squirrel gravy that they put on that. A prairie dog, a lone prairie dog, meanders onto the Jones field.
That's
Absolutely.
That's up there with the raccoon. Yeah.
Yeah, we have Prairie Dog Town in Lubbock. These guys would be an absolute fan favorite.
Okay, so the last one I got for you, I don't actually see them in the guidebook here, possibly because we're working on bringing them back from extinction. But let's bring it back to a TCU game. We're playing for the saddle, West Texas Championship. A Texas horned lizard, gets loose onto the field, and somehow everyone notices. Okay, so this is a big if. Everyone can see the lizard. Oh, whoa, wait, stop play, endangered animal on the field. Is TCU winning that game, or because it's a more West Texas-y animal these days, there's not really in Fort Worth anymore, is that going to the side of Texas Tech?
Seems like
Lubbock.
It seems like if an endangered animal shows up as a mascot for the other team, you're in dangerous waters there. I think that would be a big game quitter if a horned frog showed up in Lubbock on the field.
Yeah, I would love to spin that as a potential positive, but I can't come up with anything. That seems no bueno.
I mean, did it get stepped on? Is that what we're doing? If
it gets stepped on, then we're definitely losing.
Yeah, if the horse, if the masked rider steps on it as soon as it walks out of the tunnel, I think that's a great sign. But otherwise, I don't know. I don't feel great about that.
We all lose, all of us, everyone, if the horned frog gets stepped on. Yeah. That's the state reptile of Texas, people. We can't have that happening.
Yeah, no. We don't want that to. I'm just saying it would happen.
If it did,
no, we don't want it to happen.
Okay, yeah, we're all chiming in about squirrel gravy now. Squirrel gravy and biscuits are one of the best things you will ever have, in Tim's opinion. Yes, Joey says squirrel gravy is a delicacy. All right, that's on my list now. Next time I make it out to a West Virginia tailgate, I'll have to try out some squirrel gravy. So let's get an official 2024 prediction on the books, win total, bowl game that you hope to be in. I mean, we're all aspiring to be in the Pop-Tarts Bowl. Let's be real. But where you think the Raiders are going to end up, fire away.
Yeah, it's been a while since we've had an Alamo Bowl, if ever. Have we been to an Alamo Bowl?
That's a good question, actually.
I think it's been a long time.
Yeah, that last one was right the day after Leach got fired. We beat Kirk Cousins in Michigan State in the Alamo Bowl.
Yeah, that was wow. So maybe that's the goal this year. If not, I don't know, a playoff with the expanded playoff. If you're really shooting high, if you believe Cactus Kyle there with the top 3 roster in the Big 12, you get into a Big 12 championship game, the sky's the limit. But I would like, a Pop-Tarts Alamo Bowl-esque run from the Red Raiders. An 8-4, 9-3 kind of year would be really, really strong for Texas Tech. And if you're looking at improving every year and developing talent and looking at young talent becoming old talent, I think that's the goal, right? If you listen to Joey, you probably have a bigger goal in mind, but I think a realistic goal might be an Alamo Bowl.
Yeah, I think undefeated is certainly out of the realm with a young team, 11-1 even. I think you're probably going to have more than one slip up. But yeah, I'll say 10-2, Big 12 championship game appearance. And then we win that thing. They let us in. Don't let us get hot. We might host a playoff game in Lubbock. Who knows what kind of animal might run on the field. Hopefully all the ones that you just ran through all at once.
Just a whole Noah's Ark herd.
Yeah. So a lot of Tech fans snake bit from last year. Not me. Pass me the Kool-Aid. I think we can make a real run at this thing. So it's February. Things could change, but that's where I'm at right now. I'll say 10-2, Big 12 championship game appearance, and then we'll see where the chips fall.
You sound like me every August, brother.
Yeah. That's where every college football fan should be every offseason.
Yeah. What were you saying, Rob?
Let's hire an offensive line coach before we go all in here.
Yeah, I trust Joey to get that figured out. I'm not worried.
It'll happen. Well, any parting thoughts, parting shots before I have you plug your stuff and we close this sucker down?
Kyle, final thoughts?
Just one. A couple of weeks ago, Clint, fellow Fort Worth resident here, I was well, actually way back in November, I was invited to Texas Tech Night at the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo.
Oh, nice.
I was like, yeah, that'd be a lot of fun. It'd be my first time at the Fort Worth Rodeo. And about a couple of weeks before rodeo night, I started texting people because I had extra tickets. I was like, hey, you want to come to the rodeo with me that night? And I got one of two answers. Yes, would love to. And then later on, they would cancel for the same reason that people were about to say no. Or I got no because the Texas Tech basketball game versus TCU is that night in Fort Worth. So if you can pass along my displeasure to Jeremiah Donati about the schedule and I don't know who the higher-ups are at the rodeo, but I feel like we would have had more Red Raiders in the shoal that night had it not been Texas Tech Night at the rodeo. And so
it's a conspiracy.
Yes, last time they were just very transparent about it. And they said, we're not going to sell you tickets. You can't come into our stadium. Like, okay. And we can have a debate on whether that's fair or foul. But to do this backroom deal where we make Texas Tech Night at the Fort Worth Stock Show and Rodeo the same night that, let's face it, we were probably about to take over that arena and win the game on the road. It's a little bit underhanded to me. It's a little bit backhanded. So next year, just play us fair, straight up in Fort Worth, not on the same night as Texas Tech Night at the rodeo, and let's see what happens.
I'll be honest with you. I didn't even know that they did Texas Tech Night at the rodeo. I knew they did TCU night, but I didn't know they had other college nights at the Fort Worth Rodeo. This is the first time hearing about that.
I'm just assuming they have like an A&M, Baylor.
I mean,
Texas
if they have
night.
Texas Tech, then it would. I would assume they have them for all of them. Man alive. Yeah.
But you know what? Actually, I don't want to leave it on like a potentially negative note, so I'll circle back to something else.
Okay.
It's like the handshake meme template. Josh Young, all-star third baseman for the Texas Rangers.
Yeah.
Obviously a great Red Raider. I think made a lot of TCU fans, Tarrant County residents happy with the Rangers World Series.
Yes.
So I think we can end on that note. TCU fans, Tech fans coming together for a Rangers World Series championship earlier.
Josh Young for life. He brought us. We finally did it. That's the perfect place to end this show. Yes, a reminder to everyone, nothing matters because the Texas Rangers have now won a World Series. And they will always, forever, be World Series champions. We weren't dreaming, right? It happened. Perfect. Fantastic. Guys, thank you so much for coming on the show. Please take an opportunity to tell the people where to find you, all the things they need to subscribe to. Fire away.
Find us on Twitter at Gambling Gauchos. You can find us on Patreon, patreon.com/Gambling Gauchos. Facebook, Instagram, wherever you look, at Gambling Gauchos is the handle. We'll stream later tonight if you want to join in on YouTube, youtube.com/@Gambling Gauchos.
Fantastic. Yeah, there you go. Perfect. Excellent. Thanks so much again for joining us, guys. Everybody, if you haven't already, subscribe to this show. We're doing this sort of thing every single week. It's a fun time here at the Biggest 12. Subscribe at Big 12 VOCFB. There's the banner. There it is right there. Do it right now. Tell all your friends and family about it. Bring it up at the dinner table, even if it's awkward. We need to grow the show, okay? Let's grow the show together. This has been the Biggest 12 with Clint Foster. Follow me at Clint Foster Comedy on YouTube. Again, hope to have some new videos out here for you very, very soon. Working on my next Big 12 rivalry draft script, in addition to a couple others. And follow me on Twitter at Clint_Foster55. And until next time, I hope your team wins. Go Big 12.